to Other Realms, Cork's unique comic book shop. Here, hundreds of titles cater for every taste. From its explosion in popularity since the early 20th century, comic books today have never been more popular. Cork people have recently embraced the medium creatively. We talk to new and established stars as well as Cork's own comic creator group.
Basically, we've had a kind of a lifelong love of the form and the medium, and we were so inspired by what's happening elsewhere in the country. Dublin has a pretty strong and healthy comic scene, and we just wanted to get something going here. We wanted to make our own comics. I didn't think it would take off quite as much as it has, but we're delighted and just inspired by what was happening elsewhere and wanting Cork to kind of represent.
We've done several anthologies at this stage, and there's, I suppose, from writing, there's quite a bit involved. What we do is get submissions first from writers, and then pick the submissions best suited to it, and then you work on getting the ideas into a story form. So that goes through several stages. An idea isn't yet a story, so it's working with someone to turn that good idea into a script, and there's several stages in that, kind of getting the idea, fleshing out the story, then putting it into an actual comic book script that an artist could work from.
Like you take it like a story or a theme or whatever, and we have artists that we kind of know, and we do kind of match to see who would fit that. There's also a system to that, because you have to make sure that someone isn't going to be totally mismatched to the theme or the story. Having an anthology is a way of kind of dipping your toes into it, like a 4-page, 5-page story, and also just getting something finished, getting something out there it's really encouraging, and so it's a good system for people who are coming in to comics to just work on something kind of a bit small scale like that, and then build from there.
I suppose when you say comics, the thought that comes into their head would be Superman and Batman, and that's not everything the comics are. It's not all American. It's not all superheroes. They can be 101 different things. There's romance comics and drama and science fiction and horror, and it's a medium just like any other. You can have any kind of film. You can have any kind of comic.
The first meeting we had maybe like 6 people, but they were all friends of ours and people that we knew were into comics. And I think seeing it expand, like in good months, we have like 40 people here, and like it kind of branching out.
I think a big thing that I like about the group is that if you come there as someone who's new to comics and you're looking for advice, we have writers and artists, we have colorists, we have letterers, we have editors, we have people with experience in publishing, with doing comics online, and we have people who are new to this. We have a few professional people who are professional artists who have done editing professionally. So you can come and you can get all the experience you could want for comics in all areas in one room, and it's a really friendly open group. So if you want to get advice, if you want to bring your portfolio and get it reviewed, it's a brilliant resource for people.
The fact that there's so many different colours and shades to it now beyond the superhero stuff, and I say this as a big superhero fan,
but it's certainly encouragement for people to come and see other people doing it, and to come in month on month and to talk to other people who are working on books, and then to be in. It's good for me even as in making comics to kind of come talk to other people, get ideas, kind of really get refreshed and get invigorated, and to get books made, and to see other books kind of slowly beginning to come out of Cork. It's brilliant.
German-born Eva Wiederman hosts a monthly drink and draw meetup for local artists. As well as doing freelance work, she currently draws the Star Wars Rebels comic book. We asked her how she approached doing the art for the comics medium.
So comics mean for me, you dive into a world of art, accompanied by a story. It's not quite a movie, it's not a film, but it's also not a still or an illustration where you can just figure out what's going on in that image. For me as an artist, I have to admit, it was always the art I find most exciting about a comic. It can be a really crappy story. When the art is nice, I'm gonna buy it. Well, I was very much into European comics, like the French comics, the Belgian comics, the likes of Marini, for example, or The Third Testament, or Black Sad. Something that was very elaborate artwork, panel for panel, was almost like an oil painting or something. So I was very much into that stuff. I started out as a graphic designer first, and I worked for agencies in advertising. So that gave me a bit of a business background and marketing knowledge to start my career as a freelancer later. And so I just wanted to become an illustrator and a concept artist because I was very much into games and role-playing games. So this was always something I wanted to approach eventually. And so I just put together a portfolio, and I started going to conventions, game conventions. I started to approach publishers, sending out my stuff, and eventually this led to the right contacts. The style for Star Wars Rebels is actually quite my comfort zone, I have to admit. It's very anime style already, and I did that for a long time in my life. I never even imagined myself doing something like this. Doing comics was always a big dream of myself for many years, but obviously I didn't kind of manage to get into it that much because I started doing the illustration work. But then when I got asked to do the gig for Star Wars Rebels, I was really like, what, me? Seriously, this is really crazy, and of course I'm going to do this and I'm going to throw myself into it. And it turned out to be actually really comfortable. I started out as a traditional artist many years ago, so just doing pencils and just watercolor and doing it, like being really proud of that. So, and here I am doing mainly digital art because it's just a medium of the time of the business, and I couldn't even think doing anything like all of my work I couldn't even do in traditional anymore because the time is limited. It's just so much easier to do everything in digital, and you can do changes quickly, and your clients demand quick changes. So digital is definitely my future of doing the art for especially comics. I'm quite happy with what I'm doing at the moment.
Here in Ballycotton resides one of Marvel's biggest stars. Along with recent hit Cú Chulainn, Will Sliney continues to draw for his childhood superhero Spider-Man. We asked him what it was like to work for one of comic books' biggest companies.
Kind of started off in the same way most other people did in comics, and just I was really interested in it and sending stuff off to whatever publisher would look at my work. And Future Quake was one of those things where it was kind of an indie published book over in the UK, and they were looking for to collaborate, to team up a couple of kind of new writers and artists together just to give them a chance to get published. And that's what that was, Atomic Rocket Group 66 with Atomic Diner. And that was my first full comic really, and which was great. Like Farscape especially and MacGyver were definitely in, like I was hired on because they liked the way that I was drawing. The Clone Wars was a little different because that was based heavily off the animated series, and they had such kind of a strong character model style. And Marvel was always the goal for me, and I didn't think it would happen so early on in my career, so I was delighted, and I was delighted to get something like, normally when you get a start with Marvel you might get like a 6-page story or maybe an issue if you're lucky, but they put me on what was essentially going to be the whole run of the book, and they told me that from the start. Yeah, the call for Spider-Man then was even bigger because that was he was the character I loved when I was growing up, and the way it kind of started was funny. It was during a storyline where Dr. Octopus was Spider-Man. The first issue I drew was that version of Spider-Man. The next month I was doing the regular Peter Parker Spider-Man, and then the following month was when they put me on a full-time Spider-Man title, which was Spider-Man 2099, and I've been doing that now for, like, it's been my longest run in comics, and it's exactly what I wanted to do. So if I can just kind of stay in that little zone for another little while longer, now I'll be very happy. Writers often have different types of scripts, like there's different styles. Like there was the old Marvel style where it would be very open, and it would be a lot would be up to you and determining like the panel count and things like that. Whereas other writers will, have a much more detailed script, and it's just kind of you get used to the way that the writer works, and the writer gets used to the way the artist works. Coloring was something that I always wanted to do. Like even before I had settled on comics and I was doing other things like 3D animation or kind of films and stuff like that, I wanted to do something with that mythology because I think it's so strong. Like those stories are amazing. So as my comic career started kicking off, I realised it was the perfect format to do it, and it was the first thing I did that I wrote myself as well. So I enjoyed that part, and I coloured the whole book and lettered it and everything. And it was nice to have something that came out in Ireland first too, because at that point in my career, everything had come out in America primarily, and a few in little comic shops here, but it was really nice to have a book that kind of went into bookstores in Ireland. I was a 3D modeler for a while, so I do build up some environments like buildings and things like that, but it's always just the inorganic stuff, and it does help me with, it's kind of a bit of a time saver for things like reference and perspective, and it helps block out those kind of side of things. But it's important for people to know, especially for people that want to get into comics, that a pencil and paper is as good as anything else. It's just simple as sitting down and drawing. All the digital release of comics has kind of revolutionised it a bit, and it's done it in a way that has it's brought comics to more people in an easier way, but that hasn't harmed the book sales of them at all. In fact, what I found has happened is people kind of get into it on their iPhones or whatever, and then they'll end up going into a comic book store and finding like the real, wealth of all the books that are there. Like I always wanted to do some sort of a Comic-Con down here in Cork, and like we had tens of thousands of people that turned up for that, which was phenomenal, and like everyone that was there really seemed to really enjoy it, so I'm sure there'll be more of those. Yeah, I love the pure kind of storytelling of it, and just the ability to create these stories, and I love the fact that like I'd be quite fast at actually drawing them now, so if I keep going the way that I'm going to get to be involved in so many stories, and I'll have so many books on the shelves in 20 or 30 years. The audience has become very, very diverse, which is very important as well, and it's just it's nice to see it going that way, and long may it continue.
To appreciate literature and understand art, there's no better place to start.